Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dad's Perspective Podcast, episode 5. That's 5 for you non-Hispanics. Well, that's me, too. Sorry, we were just talking about Mexican food, man. I got 5 on the brain. Story's been cooking up some spicy rice, and it's sounded really tasty, man. How you doing, Storyteller? What's up, man?
I'm good, dude. It's been a crazy week, but I'm all right. We're doing good. We're pushing through.
When isn't a crazy week? Right? Such is the life of honestly of you. I got my own set of adventures, but the world keeps turning regardless of if it's burning for Story, man. But how's the kiddo? First and foremost, always, right? The check-in. How is little miss?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Good. So in between episodes, for you guys who don't know, I talked to Marcus about pretty much everything. Basically, once again, my child. I can't guarantee this happens. So again, off the record here, I'm not going to point any fingers, blame names or anything. But apparently, my child told a caseworker that I did something inappropriate, which was weird. That it happened to happen right after a certain podcast was live, and a comment was made of didn't disagree, and per usual, suddenly something inappropriate happens and my child gets taken away. So
Child Protective Services showed up at the door?
Well, they called me.
Oh, they
police
called
showed
you.
Up at my door.
Okay.
Yeah, so police showed up at my door at midnight.
Yeah, paint us a picture, Story.
The day after.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in bed, and I'm like, who's at my door? I'm not trying to get mugged in the middle of the night. So we had a chat. They didn't know. They said it was for a day. They'd never seen a PFA for only a day. It was very strange. So I got it, and I didn't hear anything after the next day or the next day. I'm like, that's weird. And then that Monday, I got a constable that showed up at 9 o'clock in the morning, gave me the actual PFA paperwork, stuff like that.
What's a constable compared to a police officer?
So a police officer is just like, he's a police officer. Like, he does kind of certain things. But a constable is somebody who kind of specifically does like goes out to houses to check on people for like warrants and certain things, just to see if like, hey, can we kind of just come to an agreement like you do? If they're not home, then the police might get involved and have to manhunt and stuff.
So it's like a step lower. Who do
they
work for? Like, are they police officers or are they?
I think they work just for like the courthouse. I don't think like they're actual police.
Okay.
I never really looked into it. I do have a family friend who's a constable, and that's a good question. But I'll ask him when I talk to him.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll get some information on that.
So he gave it to me, and then actually in between, I think it was Saturday at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I had another police officer show up at my door. Luckily, I was already awake. And they were like, "Hey, like, do you know why I'm here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, PFA." I kind of figured it was coming. They're like, "No." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't know why you're here."
Oh, wow.
And apparently, a anonymous person called into the suicide hotline to say that I was posting on Facebook that I can't take it anymore and I'm going to jump off a bridge and end my life. So had to show them my Facebook and deal with that. But
so wellness check.
Yeah.
Hold on, I got questions about that, man. So if you don't mind, I'd love to know how that specific event went, because that suicide, police showing up to people who are suicidal is a big topic for me.
Basically, if like anybody ever has to deal with this, know that like if you make a call, whether it's real or not, they will show up to your home. This isn't like you call and like they're gonna let it go. They are very aware that a person uses the hotline to specifically try to make me seem like I'm insane and unstable. They verified to me many times that who the person is. They, because of the situation I'm in. Basically, they will show up at your door. They knock. And he was like, "Hey, we got a call from the wellness center for the crisis hotline. This is a statement that was made. Are you okay?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, like I'm fine. Like nothing's going on." And they're like, "Well, like we got the report that this is what happened. Like, is there something going on?" I said, "Look, there's a situation. You guys are already aware." And they're like, "Yes, we know who you're talking about. We're aware that they call. But we still have to do our job. Like, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm telling you, I'm fine." I'm like, my daughter like relies on me. Like, I'm not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
I was like, "Would you like to see my Facebook?" And he's like, "If you don't mind." I'm like, "Look," pulled it up, made sure I pulled up like all my posts. I said, "Here," handed my phone. He spent like a minute looking through, and he's like, okay, he's like, I'm not seeing anything. He's like, you could have deleted it. He's like, but you didn't even know I was coming. You didn't know I was here. I'm like, exactly. He's like, I don't think anything's wrong. He's like, usually there's signs or something like that we can usually tell. You seem pretty stable. You seem in high spirits. He's like, I'm letting you know you are being recorded as well. He's like, my camera's on. He's like, just so we can say in case something happens, like, hey, I did talk to him. He seemed fine. I don't see any signs, and I'm like, yeah, my dad was a cop. I'm like, I know everything. I'm like, it's chill, man. You're just doing your job. And then he like called in to dispatch, like, hey, all clear. We're good.
Cool. So good interaction.
We chatted for a little bit. And he's like, some other stuff happened with another person. They were signs. He ended up going to the hospital, but you seem fine.
Yeah.
He's like, if you need anything, he's like, please call. He's like, we never want to see anybody get hurt. If you're hurting, please like reach out to somebody. And I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm like, I promise I'm fine. I was like, I was talking to a really good friend of mine. Me and her were chatting. We were gaming for it together a little bit. I'm like, I was listening to music. He's like, all right, man. He's like, cool. He's like, well, you have a good night. I'm like, yeah, you have a safe night, dude. Appreciate it. He's like, yeah.
And what time was this? Like what time of the night?
Like 2:00 in the morning.
Jeez. That's crazy.
So, yeah, and then after that,
at least it was like nice, though. I mean, like, it sounded like they were really cordial.
They every time they come, like, it's always jokes. Like when I had the first PFA, like he showed up and he's like, hey man, he's like, didn't want to bother you this late. He's like, this came across my table, guy, got to give it to you. And I'm like, yeah. and I guess he had like a trainee or something with him.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like, you know what happened? He's like, no. And I'm like, okay. He's like, so, he's like, what'd you do now? I'm like, I don't know, dude. I'm like, what didn't I do?
You tell me.
And he looked at the other guy and he's like, yeah, we've been dealing with these guys forever. He's like, it's happens a lot. He's like, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, every time I call in, I'm like, as soon as I say, hey, I'm like, is there something I can do about this? I'm like, you guys know instantly who I am as soon as I give a name. They're like, yeah. So, it's just funny because like it's nice that like even though the bad shit's happening, like having that connection with the police despite how bad things are, like we can joke around and like it's not always serious and like it's lighthearted and like they know like I'm going through shit and like they know like I don't want them out there and I apologize every time, like I'm so sorry you have to waste your time being out here, like you have more important things you need to be doing instead of doing this. And like we always joke around and it's nice. And I mean it also doesn't help when I was younger. Had a lot of speeding tickets, so they knew me pretty well from that. But
so are you knowing these cops that are showing up? Like, is it like a hey Tommy? Like I've seen you X amount of times.
Usually, yeah. Like if I can remember the face, like they know.
Wow.
And they're just like, yeah, man. And like we shoot the shit a little bit, and they're like, how you been? I'm like, I'm good, man. Like could be better. Like, well, yeah, obviously.
Oh
but,
man.
But yeah, they
that makes me so happy
time.
to hear that like. You are treated like a human being,
Yeah.
Getting shown up at 2:00 at night, like just just that alone, not even attaching the horrible situation why they're there with false accusations, just like cops showing up at your house, like that is a terrible thing that most people will never get to experience. And you've had it happen handfuls of times at this point now, man.
I would say at least. Off the top of my head, just for COS stuff and like PFA, at least I'd say 4.
That's crazy.
And then just other incidents, I'd say probably like 6 or 7 call-ins and showing up the station. I'd say probably 8 or 9. So like we're pretty close. I mean, and then, like
first name basis.
It's pretty bad, but I mean, like it's good to have a relationship with your local police because if you ever do need something, I feel like it's a lot easier to talk to them and they're more honest and upfront compared to like if you're just somebody who gives them a hard time or like they don't really know you, because I mean
familiarity is everything.
Nice. Yeah, and even my dad said like cops get a bad rep, but like I mean it's usually on the people. Like there are bad cops, not every cop is amazing.
No way. It's on the person who can legally kill you. That like
I mean if you're gonna be belligerent and not listen and you're gonna be a butthole, like I mean what person wants to deal with you, whether it's a cop or not? Like I don't want to deal with you. So like just me being like patient and not like being a butthole, like, oh, you're fucking here again? Like cool, like better. Like I didn't do shit. Like I wouldn't want to deal with you. I wouldn't be cordial. But I've always been polite.
Thank God
nice.
you're not a cop then. Because ultimately,
like,
as a police officer, and we won't go off on that because trust me, I could. But like as a cop, man, you're showing up to somebody's house with the authority to kill them. Like, it's your job to be cordial. It's your job to be professional. We are not the king's servants who have to open our doors to the guards, right? Like, ultimately, you're an innocent man being accused of one of the most heinous crimes in the country.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you shouldn't have to kiss the ass of a cop to make sure that your innocence is still true. Like, and not, that's just my 2 cents, but that's not the topic. It ain't about cops. We're here for the kid part. But yeah, it's just, I love to hear that you are treated with respect and dignity, because you're an innocent person being falsely accused. And if you were treated like somebody who was guilty before, just because you had an attitude, that's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, technically, right now, I'm guilty until proven innocent.
Exactly, because your kid's already gone.
I can't see my kid. I can't talk to my kid. I don't get any updates. And I'm like, okay, so I can have all the evidence in the world that, I have plenty of proof that I've always been found not guilty. And, like I've told people, incident, put 2 and 2 together, they line up. I mean, that equals 2, but I mean, it doesn't really matter, because end of the day,
well, you just have to wait to prove yourself innocent, because, like you said, guilty immediately. They've already decided that you're guilty enough to take away your daughter. So where's the whole innocent until proven guilty part? Because if you are in fact guilty, then yes, take away the kid, which you're not. But how can they take away your kid without proving that you actually did the thing you were accused of? Like, what stops you from, other than being a good person, just turning around and accusing the mom?
Nothing,
and then Emma ends up with nobody.
My thing is that I get to taking her away. That 100% I understand, because like they can't say 100% I'm innocent, which is fine, and I understand that, and I understand why they took
Protect
her away.
Emma.
But my thing is, they'll at least allow me to video chat or to just phone call while someone is present. So that way I still have that connection with her, because like, look, like I get taking her away for her safety, because you can't guarantee that I am innocent. Like, you don't know that. Like, how can you, like, so like I understand that part.
Yeah, I see it though. I see it. I see your point though.
My thing is like, I've been to this so many times at this point, like at least allow video chatting so I can still have a relationship with my daughter, and she's not just thinking I left her or I had to come up with an excuse. And it's like, my thing is like, no matter whether you have a disagreement or not, like your child is not a weapon to be used against the other parent, because it doesn't just affect the other person. Like for me personally, like, it's annoying, it's aggravating, but I could deal with this all day, every day, because end of the day, I don't care anymore. Like it doesn't.
You're numbish to it.
I'm numb. Like it's aggravating, but like it pisses me off more that my child is being used as a weapon. And I know there's going to be a comment, because I'm sure you guys have not seen, because we don't tolerate it here. We don't do. We're gonna play the comment and everything. So. There was a comment that was left by a certain individual stating how basically, I need to tell the truth. And I went to a certain platform and I made it very clear of how I feel and provided evidence. And my thing is it doesn't just hurt me. It hurts the child who didn't ask for this, isn't being asked to put in this. But when you have a child for over a week and nothing is said, and they see a counselor and nothing said to the counselor, and then a podcast comes out and you leave a comment how you don't agree and it's fucked up and everything else, and then lo and behold, the very next day, when you know that the person is coming in advance, because COS doesn't just show up at your house. They will call you and say, hey, we need to come out and do a house inspection, or need to speak to you, we'll get home to stay. So
I always assumed they were like shock and awe.
So
like they just knock, hey, by the way.
It might be on certain situations, but I've never had that experience where they just showed up at my home.
That's good to
hear,
man.
I've always had a phone call, and they said, hey, are you free today? We need to come. And I'm like, yeah, I'm free. But usually, like, it's in advance. And so, like, they knew that this person was going to be there. So it's like, it's not hard to put in this person's head, like, hey, say this to this person, you're young, you're impressionable, it's going to happen. My thing is, like, after a whole week of seeing a therapist and being at school and being around the parents, nothing was said. But magically, the day after seeing something you disagree with and this person's going to be there, now all of a sudden our child says something. I mean... Yeah,
the coincidence smells like a duck, walks like a duck.
Yeah, and it's not the first time. And I've had CYS agree. I've had the district investigator agree. It's shady shit. But, again, you can't prove anything,
Man.
So... it's just simply, my personal opinion, other people's opinions, they want to put 2 and 2 together, but can't prove it.
So are they, is a lot of times, because this is what, the third or second time Emma's been, third time has been taken away.
Third time for the SA allegations, the 11th time that she's been taken away.
And like, I'm going to say it. So sexual assault, like,
yes.
So, and I mean, it's hard to say out loud, but ultimately that is when I said, like, being accused, man, of one of the most heinous things ever. And like, you can't do anything except wait to prove your innocence. And that's crazy, man. And I hate to say the hard part out loud, but it's true, because this is the weight of a moon that you are holding on your shoulders, and you maintain your cordial response to the police, to the investigators. You have this utmost faith that because you are being honest, the truth will set you free from this eventually. At least that's from me looking in. It's like you have this, like, it's just a resolve that you downplay what you're dealing with, and I'm essentially trying to say the strength that you have inside you that is pushing you through this is monumental. It's amazing that you deal with it with the stride that you do, my friend.
I mean, I look at it as in, like, for parents out there who may deal with this, are dealing with this. Like, my thing is at the end of the day, like, I will admit, I do not like my other half. I literally, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to deal with them. I wish I didn't have to, because I'm just tired of it. But end of the day, like, my child is going to grow up, or sorry, I shouldn't say my child. Our child is going to grow up and see everything that, I mean, may eventually see everything that's transpired. That's not something I ever want to cross. It's not something I want to talk to her. My thing is, like, I'd rather feel like, look, me and mom just didn't get along. We separated and leave it at that. Yeah. Will that happen? Probably not. She probably will eventually push at some point to really want to see everything. And then at that point, you know, if she's old enough, fine. That's on her to make that decision, and to each her own. But my thing is like, you know, I could retaliate. I could be a butthole in response and not, you know, want to cooperate and stuff. But like, my child needs to understand that no matter how much you may despise the other person, your child is not a weapon. You do not use your child against the other parent. Like, you put your feelings aside, and it's difficult. I'm not gonna lie. I can sit here and say, oh yeah, dude, like, it's easy for me. Like, I can do it. No, it's a struggle. Honestly, there's days where, like, I want to flip out and just, you know, tell them off and say, you know, go eat a bag of dicks, and you know, I hope, you know, you get hit by a bus or something. But like, why? Like, what do I get out of it? Like, it doesn't help the situation. Like, just be an adult. Like, come talk to me. Like, when this situation happened, literally all it could have been was like a phone call and say, hey, like, this was said to me, or this was said to the caseworker. Like, we need to know what's going on. Like, why would she suddenly say this? But was there a phone call? No, there was nothing. No, like, why made this have happened? Like, is there any idea? And what agitates me more is the fact of a situation that happened a while ago, happened against another individual in the kiddo's life, and found obviously innocent. But like, they defended that person like almost instantly, of like, well, blown out of proportion, you know, blah blah blah. Yeah. But when it comes to me, it's like, let's throw the book at them, not try to defend this person, speak up for me, nothing. So it's like, okay, hold so on, basically,
I'm not understanding. Can you paint a better picture?
I can't really go into
without names
about that. But well, even like, I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about that situation, because it's not. It involved me, but it didn't. So I don't know legally if I'm allowed to even nonchalantly kind of like make it. But basically,
right, you thought you saw somebody advocate for somebody else, and you thought that person would advocate for you, but hasn't. Was that right?
Pretty much. Okay. Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Like, they never, like, they say that, like, you know, they care and everything else, and they're trying to be the best they can with co-parenting and everything else, but not once have they ever stuck up for me and said, hey, like, we may not get along, but I know you would never do such a thing. And probably could get it to, like, not even happen or go anywhere, but they don't. Because, again,
well, that's hard to expect from somebody. Because there could be an aptitude of reasons why not. Or aptitude, like just a mountain of reasons.
So, I mean, my thing is, like, if I know this person, I've been with this person, we had a child together, like, I would defend that person if I know wholeheartedly they would never do something terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Like, my thing is like, I may not like you. We may not get along. I may, you know, wish I never had to see your face again. But deep down, if somebody said, hey, like, even now, sometimes people make comments, I'm like, that's a bit too far. Like, you don't know this person, how they used to be, but, like, I'm going to still defend them, because I'm like, it's not right. I'm like, at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. And I'm like, as well as like you get this picture of you that gets painted as like you're a monster and you're a terrible human being and you're a terrible father and everything else. It's like, okay, so what do? Just give in and I be that monster and I be that terrible human being and I just, you know, stoop to your like no, like it's not worth it. That's not the person I am. And I'm like, and you know, I'm not a saint. Like I have my problems. I've made mistakes and, you know, in what I posted, like I admitted to certain things I did wrong and I could have done better. And even now I still make some mistakes, but at least like I will try to talk to somebody about what's wrong because I'm an adult and that's what we do as adults. We need to work things out and talk to them. Like I'm not saying we're always going to get along and we're going to be able to talk it out, you know, calmly. We might scream at each other and be cursing and stuff, but at least we're talking.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's not even like a talk. It's just like a me. And if you don't do what I say, like your life's gonna be miserable.
Yeah.
As like if you're just honest and upfront and come to me and I believe, but after so many lies and so many things that just don't add up and there's never an apology or an explanation of like how you're feeling, like how am I supposed to be able to co-parent not knowing like the situation and how you're feeling and why you're doing the things you're doing and like how can we resolve this so that like we can co-parent. Like that's what I feel like a lot of people don't understand when they separate is like, okay, you whatever reason you separated in your relationship, you still have a kid together, you need to raise that kid together. Like it may be difficult to try to get help through a therapist or count whatever, but like you need to learn how to communicate whether it's just text message, whether it's through an app, you know, from the courts, whatever it may be. Maybe you have to find somebody that will agree to be a third party. Like you need to find a way that you can deal with this and be adults about it. But like it doesn't happen. And if you're gonna be stubborn and like pig-headed and not be willing to you know come to some sort of agreement where you both can kind of do what you need to do, it's not going to work. It's never going to work. And if both parents are like that, it makes it 10 times worse. And I will tell you now, in the past, CYS has said like, you know, if this continues, you know, there is a possibility they could take your child away because you are not being able to co-parent and you're not doing what's best for your child. You know, you're putting them in a situation where like you're really mentally harming your child.
Yeah.
Now, if they truly have that power, I don't know. I've never looked into it because
I mean, they'd have to prove harm, dude, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look at
so
that it makes I never really thought about it from that perspective. Is it takes two to tango, right? Ultimately meaning to co-parent it takes two individuals. And at the bottom dollar, the minimum thing is once you're in your situation, there's like a court order, right? That says you can have the child now, they can have the child then. This is your responsibilities and rights. This is their responsibilities and rights. And like how much does that actually cover? Like how much gray area do those court orders leave for fighting?
So what basically happens for anybody who hasn't gone through having to divorce or separate, whatever deal. So basically what happens is if you guys have lawyers, you can come to terms through the lawyers. You don't have to go through the court system. You guys can hash it out. If you all agree, you get paperwork signed, lawyers sign it. It goes to a judge signs it. That's it. And that could be as much or as little as you want. In the custody agreement, there's certain things that you can and can't have in the custody agreement.
Like what?
It pertains. So like
more so can't.
We couldn't have like he needs to pay this much in child support per month or she needs to pay this much child support because that's a separate entity. Like we can't. That needs to be sorted out through different means. And there's certain in certain events, like we can't say specifically in this event this will happen, like this person. Certain events, like you know, you can, but like you can only do so much that can be in there.
It can't be too narrowed down.
Yeah. And it also can't be too broad either. Like there's some leeway in certain things, but at the end of the day, basically what my lawyer has told me and stuff like that. Like at the end of the day, like it's a piece of paper. What's on that paper needs to be followed, but there is still some leeway. Like if you can kind of agree to certain things, then it's okay. Like you know, I know it always sounds negative for, you know, the co-parenting experience I'm in, and it's not always negative. Like there have been times when we've gotten along, and whether that's because this person got what they wanted, so like we're fine, and those times are great. Like there's no fighting, like we're cool. You know, like we took our daughter out to do certain things together, which is kind of weird, but you know, like my daughter wanted it, and I'm fine with it. You know,
best
like
for her.
I you know, it's what's best for her. It's what she wants, and she's happy, and like I don't mind. Like I've always wanted to be like growing up, like if I ever have to co-parent, like I like it to be in like a way where like we can kind of be friends, or even if we're not friends, but like still be able to do things occasionally with our child. And like it was weird and kind of uncomfortable, but I was content because I'm like, Emma, is happy, she's doing her thing. And I'm fine with that. But
it's
it's
when
kind of
it's
got what we
not.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when it's
And
not good though, is when it's hard.
and that's something that we agree, but it wasn't in the custody agreement.
Yeah.
And like there's certain times that like I've taken her, certain times her mom has taken her because that's something we agreed to. And it wasn't in the custody agreement. That was outside my time.
Yeah.
But like for say example, in our custody agreement, like in there we agree on holidays. Something me and her have always agreed on. We always make adjustments as need be, which we've never fought about holidays. Like we say, hey, this holiday can, so like that's good. And like vacations, it's like 30 days in advance. You need to let the other person know, like, hey, I'm having a vacation this time. It's gonna go over into your time. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I have the right to say no. And
okay.
Now if they do it like, and now that's not a guarantee. I mean, she could tell me, a week in advance, like, hey, I'm going on vacation in, a week, and it's going to spill over like a day or two in your time. Is that okay? I have every right to say no.
Gotcha.
Even if it's a month in advance, 2 months in advance, I have every right to say no.
But you can also say yes, though.
Well, yeah, and I can say yes. And usually I do because like it's for Emma, and I don't really care. But
it's cool to know there's flexibility in it, I guess. I really thought it was like you can't delineate at all from it.
So the thing is, like, say, my other half constantly asks for vacation time and gives like the 30 days in advance. And every single time it's no, 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 no. At some point, she could be like, look, I've asked 10 times to go on vacation. It spills a day or two into his time and he refuses every single time. We could go back to court and the judge could be like, look, like, what is your problem? Like, you're trying to get vacation, she's asked for vacation and you're just not allowing it.
Why are you being so
and they
stubborn?
could be like, you're being stubborn, like you're not, and then they could be like, look, like we're gonna make a change. So like you are allowed to say no this many times, or like, you are no longer allowed to say no, or like they are guaranteed, vacation next time or something.
So it's kind of fluid. Like it can be modified.
It can be changed at any point. It's not simply like,
shit.
So like it wouldn't just be like simply I have a stick up my butt and I want something changed. I'm gonna go to court and say, hey, this isn't working out. I don't like it. I have to have a legitimate reason and I have to have evidence. So I can't just go. So like we have made changes. And there's been times where like, our daughter has asked to come over when it wasn't my time. And, I could simply, so like if our daughter is constantly asking to come over and I'm constantly getting that time, I could be a butthole and go to court and say, look, like, the agreement is she has her this many days, I have her this many days, yet I have her more often than she does. I feel like the custody order should be changed to where now I'm getting her these extra days. I could do that to be a butthole, but I don't because I'm like, it's just what the kiddo wants. I'm like, if we can agree, why spend the money, go to court, and make changes?
Yeah.
Like, it's not fair. Like, just hey, if she wants more time with this person, that person, like, don't fight it. But it's difficult when you have someone who you can't always necessarily agree that it's not being put in the child's head or it's just being lied to you about. So like it's kind of difficult, and that's why like co-parenting and being able to communicate and trust the other person is big importance.
Yeah.
My thing is, recently there was an incident where I did find out there was lying, and that's kind of where I finally had my final straw and broke. Because like if you just came to me as a parent and said, hey, this situation's going on, I need some extra help, can you help me? Cool, I will see what I can do. I am on a fixed income. I can't always help all the time, but I will see what I can do. I always try to help everybody the best that I can, and I frequently go without certain things. I go out with new clothes or shoes or certain things that I may want, because I'm like I know what it's like not to have certain things and not to have support. So I want to be there for that person no matter how I feel. And my thing is at the end of the day, you're only hurting the child. So like if you're hurting, like, hey, like I can't get this for our child because I just lost my job, can you be willing to do this for like they'll fine, cool, we can talk about it. But when you're constantly lying and not willing to communicate and express certain things, at a point, when do you stop saying, okay, I'm going to go out of my way and do this because I don't know if you're telling the truth? Like, are you really using this for, like, are you really using this for what you're saying you're using it for? Like, does the child really want, to spend more time with you, or are you putting this in the child's head? Or, like, okay, well, the child tells me that, but like, again, is this just the child saying like, oh, well, this person said, hey, tell dad this, and now they're saying this because they don't know any better. And
So
in
once
time it
that
does get
trust
better.
is
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's difficult, and once it's broken, it's very hard to get back. And when it's a repeated incident, like at what point, even if they're doing better, because like people grow up, they get older, things change, but it's difficult to say like, okay, like they've gotten older, they've gotten wiser.
It's all right. I can mute my track. Sorry. Lindsay
Nah, it's
just
fine.
got home. You're on a roll.
So
Right back into it.
it's
Go.
difficult. And my thing is you can always say, hey, they've gotten older, they've gotten better. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to make it sound like this person is always terrible, 24/7. We've
But
had
when
good
she is.
experiences. Certain things obviously have gotten better. Some things have stayed the same. Some things have gotten worse. That's life. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to judge. I can't prove certain things, and end of the day, I hope that this person gets whatever help they need and can figure out whatever the situation may be. And I hope at some point it gets to a point where I can truly be like, okay, when they tell me something, I can believe it.
Yeah. Regain the trust.
And we can co-parent, and it's not this constant fighting, and I have to second guess everything, and it's difficult. And as much as I try, you get to a point where you don't want to try anymore. You don't want to keep hounding and badgering and fighting. And it's just like, I'm tired. I am tired of dealing with this for how many years I've been having to deal with it. Like, and I could be sitting here and be told like, you don't tell the truth and like a pity me story and you're always the victim. And it's like, look, I'm not saying I'm the victim. I'm not saying this is 100%, this other person causing this. Maybe somewhere along the line, it is my fault. Maybe I said something, did something that really hurt this person, and they don't know how to express it. They can't talk about their feelings.
Yeah. It takes
they
two, man.
That anger. Oh, I know, but still, like,
two.
I can't 100% blame this person for everything.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, if you're not willing to open up to me, how do I fix that?
Yeah. You
and
have
it's
to
like
move
I've
forward.
tried. Yeah, and that's my thing. I am finally moving forward because I cannot keep beating my head against the wall. Like you can only do it for so long before you get a migraine, and you're like, you know what? I've done this long enough. This wall isn't cracking. There's blood everywhere.
Yep.
I'm tired. I need to go take a rest. I need to just focus on what I can control and just leave what I can't control behind.
Yeah.
And that's a big part that I think a lot of people who co-parent tend to forget because they focus on the negative. And like when you're in a situation where everything's always good forever, you don't really ever have to think about this. And like, for me, it's very hard as a single dad to meet other people who want to deal with the situation I'm in, or they're like, well, like play dates for the kiddo is difficult because they're like, well, you're a single dad, like it's weird that you want to be alone with like my wife or just us, like what's going on, like so it's hard, and people don't realize that and give them the benefit of the doubt, which I understand. This world's kind of messed up, but luckily, like
you got to believe in people though, man. Most people are good. They really are. The internet wouldn't make you think so, but most people aren't doing terrible things.
And luckily the people who like in your situation, like this is something you've never had to think about. Like you've like, if you don't meet people like this, like it's not something in your head you ever think about, like, well, I wonder what they're going through. Like, are they struggling? Like, are like they always seem so happy and like their kids always happy, but like behind the scenes, like
what's going
what
on?
are they dealing with? And like you never realize until you meet somebody who opens up about it. You're like, holy hell, that is a side that I don't have to deal with. Like, I'm happily married, like we get along, we argue sometimes, but we work it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, but like what happens if you don't work out? That one time you don't work out and then it continues and then you separate. Like this is all things that like you might have to deal with, and people don't ever sit down and talk about it. And like my thing is, I think it's something that you should sit down and talk about with the other half. I think it's something that like, hey, if we separate, even if we don't get along, like can maybe in place, like we come up with something, we have it in writing, we get it notarized, and we both have a copy saying, hey, at one point we sat down, we talked about it.
Prenup.
I don't know how well it would hold up in court.
Prenup.
But I mean,
that's
prenup
what that
is. A bit.
You can define money, health, and child in a prenup. Yeah. Like if we break up, this is how we'll divide the children. You can literally have all of that in a prenup.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, even if you don't want to go through the money situation, all that stuff, and you just want the kid stuff, if you can do that just for a prenup, cool. If not, again, a piece of paper, you go to court, notarize it. I mean, I don't know how well it is, but at least like you can do it, even when things get hard. And that's what's really important is like, end of the day, the kid comes first, and you just need to work through it. And it can be difficult, and people change over time, and maybe like when the time comes, you guys aren't the same as when you agreed, and you can't work things out, and it sucks, but
you go in hopeful, I
it's a lot.
guess. Well, what's interesting, you
Yeah,
bring that up, is a younger friend of mine, quite young actually. Him and his girl are discussing having a kid or not. And unprompted, one of the things I just said, well, wow, you think you're ready? Like, have you guys talked about it? And one of the things he said to me, which blew my mind because I'd heard no one else say it except for you, is he said, well, we talked about what would happen if we had a kid and then split up. I'm like, what? Like, you just never have I heard somebody take that into account outside of you and then him. And it's such a mature thing to do. Nobody wants to think like we won't make it, but do you know how long 30, 40, 10 years is? That's a long time to be with one person. Stuff can happen, things can change. And it's a maturity, I think, to prepare for the worst case scenario while doing everything you can to avoid it, right? Because there's a fine line between being somebody's partner, which I hate, and being somebody's spouse or husband. You know what I mean? And it's just, me and Lindsay aren't partners, right? She is my wife and I am her husband. Like, it is not a business agreement. Now, ultimately, if worst case scenario ever happened, we would handle it the best that we could, but it's you never think it's not going to work out unless you do, and even then, it worked. Even if you were right about something really awful, and that's tough, man. Yeah. Get those prenups though.
Like we talked about it, and like we didn't think this ever happened. Yeah, like we talked about it at one point, and we're like, no, like we'll be fine. Like we can figure it out, and like like just don't take the child from me. And I'm like, I would never do such a thing, and I never have. I've never even if the courts are like, listen, 100%, this person does not deserve to have your child. Never get to talk to them. I'd be like, well, Your Honor, look, like I know we've had a lot of issues. I know there's been years of fighting and everything else, but like still at the end of the day, that's still our child's mother. Like I can't do that because like the child didn't ask for this. Like still, can there at least be like video calls or something?
Yeah.
Like can it be supervised? Or like they come over to my house and like can spend some time in the household, kind of thing. Because like I don't 100% ever. Because again, it doesn't matter how I feel. I could wish the absolute worst upon this person, but like the child didn't ask for this. The child didn't ask for you to separate and not work out. And like my thing was when we talked about having a kid, like this is a person I like never wanted kids. I never wanted to get married, and then like.
You did both.
I was like, we have so much in common. Like, I want to have a kid, and like, I want to get married, and like, I want to have a future with this person. I'm like, and they're like, I want like 4 kids. And I'm like, oh, that's a bit much. But I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, sure. I'm like, have a little family, like, talk about a future and shit. And then it just went downhill. Like, things happen. And it went really sideways really quick afterwards and kept going downhill. And ever since, it's been mostly downhill. There's been a couple times when it's been decent, but like, never really just stable. And it sucks. And I hate it. But
it's a situation you find yourself in. What do you do?
And you gotta deal with it and do the best you can. And it's just you never really know somebody until things get difficult and things change. And I always tell some of my friends who like they're like, oh well, we're getting engaged. I'm like, you're not even living together. And like, so what does that mean? We love each other. We've been together for like 3 years. I'm like, listen,
come on,
move in with each other for I'd say at least 2 years to really like understand how this person is and that you can deal with it. Because I'm like, you don't really know somebody till you start living together. Because I'm like, can you tolerate that they, leave the toilet seat up constantly, or they leave dirty laundry in a pile in the corner that you constantly have to clean up? Like, it's little things that you don't think about, but when you start living together, like, and it starts irking you, and you get angry, and you can't work it out, like. Those little things can turn a good relationship into something that's a constant fight, Well,
like, because you don't really get to know somebody until you spend a significant amount of time with them. Those little quirks, man. And are also like, can you guys learn to live with those quirks together? Like you were saying, will they grow and change and evolve? And like 2 years to me, that's a long time. Me and Lindsay were only together for like a month before she moved in. But then she moved in for a year, and then we were married, something like that. And we lived in an RV together. So you want to talk about getting to know each other?
Yeah, so
my God, that's a way to get to know each other. One toilet, it's that big. It's crazy, man. But ultimately, the test is, it's not necessarily the time. It's do you truly know this person? Do you know what they're like when they're at their worst or their best? You don't just want to see somebody in their best, because you need to make sure that you're the kind of person that will be there for them during their worst. Like my beautiful wife. You know, the trials are the parts that make relationships great. It's not the happiness, man. Happiness is great. Don't get me wrong. And you want a relationship with joy. But life is long, and there's going to be struggles in that life that make you be tested. And love is a fragile, beautiful thing, and you have to maintain it. You have to take care of it. You have to cherish it, respect it. And then when a kid comes into it, you have an entirely different set of rules that you have to live by, because now not only are you living for each other, you have to, with the same amount of time that you had before, you have to give just as much love to your spouse or significant other, and now do it for your kid too. With no more resources, you have to give more. And that is one of the biggest tests I think a relationship could truly go through, is do you have the ability to give to the man or woman that gave you this child while still taking care of the kid? A phrase I hear a lot is, well, it becomes all about the kid. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It still becomes about the relationship, and then you both do everything you can for the kid. You have to maintain the love amongst each other separate of the child, or this will die. I truly believe that, man. If a kid will take all of your attention, all of it, as it should, because we want to keep this kid going and being alive. But if like Lindsay and I will give the kid to the grandparents for an hour or two, just a small, an hour, give us an hour. And then me and her will intimately, we will spend time together. That is intentional. It's not just do the dishes. Like, she does the dishes, of course, but like, we're gonna do something together, because if we're not good, we can't take care of this kid. And that's work, man. It's a lot easier to just hyper focus on Mark, the mini one, and let us go on autopilot. And autopilot will take you straight into a mountain. Okay, a lot of people don't realize this. Autopilot just locks in your bearing and your altitude. If it's going towards a mountain, that autopilot will fly you straight into that mountain in an airplane. Okay? And it's the same with life in a relationship. If you have a life on autopilot or a relationship on autopilot, you're probably eventually going to crash and burn, man. And, when you said Uncle Ben's speech the other day, that was one of the nicest compliments I've gotten in a minute. So for context for y'all listeners, Story the other day really blasé threw out like, Marcus will give a beautiful Uncle Ben speech. That was the phrase he used. And I just was like, well, Uncle Ben, you say, he made Spider-Man, great responsibility type thing. So I kind of forgot. I got caught up in the compliment. But But ultimately, the point I think that I'm trying to make in this grand, summary of a rant is, it is not easy, you guys. Relationships before, during, and after is probably the hardest thing you'll ever have to maintain, right? Yeah. And that includes if you have a loving relationship that's still in the heart of its, bliss, or you're dealing with an old relationship that you're struggling to find the path forward. All of that is it's one of the most important things in your life, and that's why it's so hard. Because if it wasn't hard, it wouldn't be worth it. So again, we like to wrap these up usually with a bout of hope and a little bit of advice from the future. I mean, Story, again, man, with bad news comes a new reason for resolve. And with this newfound time where you once again have to be without, I feel it's appropriate to say, one of your main reasons for being, your daughter. Yeah. How do you keep yourself going while making sure that when this hurdle is over, you can keep looking forward? Like, what's your plan, man? How are you going to survive the storm again? If you know.
The first time, like, you deal with this stuff, like, the first couple times, it's difficult. And it took me a while to understand that, like, You know what? She's gone right now. Like
Oh,
I don't have her. I'm not going to see her for this time period. And if you don't know, luckily I know because I've been through it so many times. You know, I know the roughly time frame. But like not knowing is terrible. But you need to realize, like, yeah, it sucks. You don't get to see your kid. It hurts. You know, like you love seeing them, taking care of them. But take that time to focus on you. Like
mm,
get healthier, start working out, like organize the house, like do things that you can do that is a bit difficult when they're around. Because, like, let me tell you, trying to organize the house when my child is around, forget it, because she tears
yeah,
everything out, throws things everywhere. So, like, I focus on like reorganizing the home and getting rid of some toys that maybe they don't play with anymore, like doing things that I enjoy. Focus on the
gotcha.
things that I can manage and take control of and do better with my life. So when they come back, they're not coming back to like I'm crying and I'm shut down and I'm trying to cope, because not only are you dealing with this and you need to stay strong for your kid, but when they come back, they might be different because it's also affected them and they don't know
True.
what to do in the meantime. So, like, just focus on the things you take care of. For me, working out, taking care of the house, reorganizing things, getting rid of extra toys.
Yeah,
I started
bringing
enjoying
order.
things. Yeah. So just focus on things you can do and don't worry about the things you can't. And just make sure that when that child finally comes home, they're coming home to the best version of you that you can give.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be a better version. But just be ready and be prepared. And guess what? At the same time, you're saving money because, like, you're not really, having to buy the toys every time you go to the store and they're like, well,
Yeah,
Dad, could I have a toy, please? And then you give in because you love your kid and they're spoiled as hell.
yeah.
So, just and plan things for when they come back that you can do together, which I do. So,
So find
just
strength by becoming stronger. Ain't that
yeah,
something poetic? Because
yeah,
ultimately now she gets to come back to warmth and love, and that's what you want to give her. Because like I
yes,
didn't. That's so interesting. I never even thought about the angle of like she also is dealing with this and has to come back to you. It's not just
yeah.
her. It's not just you getting to see your daughter again. It's like, wow, I haven't seen dad in 2 months. Like that's a long time for a kid, man.
Yeah, sure. That's like could feel like a
That's
year. They don't know.
yeah. I never even thought about that kid perspective of it. Just the like, oh, hi, dad. It's because the closest I ever got, and I didn't have a kid at the time, was like military. Like you go for a mission, you're gone for 6 months, whatever. Then you snapshot back into somebody's life, and like that's
Yeah,
disorienting for an adult. Not even talking about for a kid. Wow,
yeah,
man. So ultimately, that just makes so much sense. Is you want that the same way you would if you're coming home from a deployment or like a trip where you had to be away from your kid. That's not a sad thing. You wouldn't want the first time your kid sees you for you to be sad. Like it's been
yeah,
2 months. You want them to be like, oh hey, and like this is the greatest moment of my life, seeing you again. And
yeah,
wow. I mean, like, that is such a positively sad thing all at the same time. I
yeah,
mean, because just thinking about it's like a move. Like, I see you in your house just picking up and be like, that fucking, I miss my kid. And it's just like, you see her and you're like, all right, here we go. Time to be. It's a wild
yeah.
duality to have to live for the sake of the child. And it really goes to show, man, sacrifice is what it is. If you want
Yeah,
to do
100%.
right by your child, you better be giving up parts of you.
Yeah,
Have you seen that picture where it's like an adult man and his son, and then the beginning of the picture, he's like a silhouette with one piece, and the man is a full colored in thing with one piece missing, and then they
yeah,
swip flop it, and by the end of it, the man is empty, and the son is grown up and is full, and the pieces
yeah,
essentially get exchanged. Like that is such a beautiful visualization on what it actually means to raise a good child. It's like you have to give basically your entire self to make sure that that kid grows up proper. Because if not, man, you're essentially just leaving it up to them. And
yeah,
you have a view that few don't, of trying to do that as a young person, you
yeah,
know? And like, it's so amazing the life lessons that you are living. Like you have pulled from your experiences to such a deep level that your entire behavior is based around making sure that other people don't experience the sorrow that you've experienced. I mean, call me wrong if I am, but you're an
wow,
arbiter of pleasure. But ultimately meaning like you do not want the world to suffer because you
no,
have and do. So that is such a rare trait for people to do. It's a lot easier to become spiteful. It's a lot easier to become angry. And you became a protector. That's crazy, man.
Of sorts. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't always this way. I used to be a butthole when I was younger, but like,
look at you now.
you get kicked so many times, you realize, like, you know what? Like, I can understand why people might be a-holes all the time and snippy. Like, I get it. Like,
you empathize.
So.
You've gained true empathy, man. And your ability to empathize for your child's experience while being on fire is what always allows you to take the higher road. Sure, you may have a battle here or there where you slip into the muck, but sometimes when you're in war, man, you gotta fight in the trenches. Ultimately, the goal is to get out of them, and that is always your objective. And I respect you more because of it. So to all you beautiful parents out there, single dads, and bald happy dads who didn't have much to say this episode. The number one rule, man, is don't panic. The number two rule is don't give up. You fight for your kid. You fight for the thing that matters. And ultimately, winning isn't defeating your ex. It's learning to cohabitate with that ex for the betterment of your kid. Now, sometimes you go to war because there are battles to be fought, but sometimes you have to wait before that fight happens. So, sorry for the next couple months, man. It's you and me, and we got more episodes to record.
Heck excited.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Episode 5 of the the Dad's Perspective podcast. And we'll see you on the next one. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more. And say bye, Story.
Later, people. Have a great day.
Much love, guys. See ya.